Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we are here to talk about the world's first billionaire, named as John D. Rockefeller. The annual Forbes 400 list of the wealthiest Americans is released every fall. Ranking highest are familiar names like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, who tops the list with a net worth of $114 billion. But a century before these tech and financial giants, there was John D. Rockefeller, who accumulated so much wealth that he could still make the list if he were alive today. John D. Rockefeller created the Standard Oil Company, the success of which made him the world's first billionaire and a celebrated philanthropist. He garnered both admirers and critics during his lifetime and after his death. Wall Street idolized his money-making abilities. Muckrake journalists exposed his unethical business practices, and his charitable causes created a legacy of generosity. John D. Rockefeller became one of the wealthiest Americans in history by taking control of the newly born oil industry. He studied safe and smart business practices that ultimately helped him gain control over most of the industry by the time he turned 40 years old. Rockefeller's Standard Oil Company became the most dominant oil refinery in the country, eventually enabling him to bring in thousands of dollars a day. His navigation of the industry and adoption of monopolistic business practices led him to be the first on the list of billionaires. Early life and business ventures of John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller was born in Richford, New York in July 1839. His father was a traveling salesman and con artist, and his mother was a religious woman who taught John about working and finances. Rockefeller had a knack for arithmetic, which would later benefit him as a businessman. At around 14 years of age, Rockefeller and his family moved to Cleveland, Ohio. He began working for farmers nearby, but disliked the amount of physical labor required. Rockefeller decided to attend Folsom's Mercantile College, where he studied penmanship and bookkeeping practices and transactions. He graduated in 1855 and started looking for bookkeeping positions around the city of Cleveland. Rockefeller was a savvy businessman who was always looking for new business opportunities and wishing to expand upon his profits. The first oil well was drilled in Titusville, Pennsylvania by Edwin Drake, who struck oil in August 1859. Rockefeller took notice of this event and decided to jump on the opportunity of the blooming oil industry. Clark and Rockefeller partnered with Samuel Andrews to establish an oil refining business. The company was named Rockefeller and Andrews after Rockefeller bought out Clark's interest in 1865. Andrews and Rockefeller created a plan to stabilize the prices of the oil industry. Since the oil industry was still new, prices were inconsistent due to the limited market. They met with their largest competitor in the Cleveland oil industry, Oliver H. Payne, to come to a partnership agreement. The Standard Oil Company was established in January 1870, which began John D. Rockefeller's long-leading success and exponential wealth. The oil industry. Finding oil in Titusville in 1859 is marked as the beginning of the oil boom in the U.S. The Industrial Revolution allowed new technological innovations to make extracting natural resources easier. The Pennsylvania Oil Rock Company was responsible for hiring Edwin Drake to drill the first oil well. Millions of oil barrels were being produced in Pennsylvania by the 1860s. This caused the oil market to become unstable as prices dropped due to increased production with little demand. The oil industry was at a low point when people no longer needed oil to light their homes, upon Thomas Edison's invention of the incandescent light bulb in 1879. However, John D. Rockefeller's involvement in oil refining kept the industry afloat. He had entered the oil industry just in time to create his own oil refining setup for little cost. The goal was to be as efficient as possible and use as many resources as possible with little waste. This allowed the Standard Oil Company to eventually buy out its competitors or run them out of business. The Standard Oil Company dominates the industry. John D. Rockefeller and his partners devised a plan in 1871 to consolidate oil refining companies to stop inconsistent collapses in pricing and gain more control of the industry. Over the next decade, Rockefeller approached his competitors to strike a deal and buy them out. In an effort to appease all parties, Rockefeller gave his competitors a portion of Standard Oil Company stock that was comparable to the value of their firms. Some oil refinery owners were brought into the Standard Oil Company and given management positions. In just 1 year, Rockefeller had successfully integrated or bought most of the oil refineries in Cleveland. By 1878, the Standard Oil Company had gained control of 90% of the oil refineries throughout the entire nation. Rockefeller had become an oil tycoon by the age of 40, and within just 1 decade of establishing the Standard Oil Company, he made it a point to weed out any unnecessary middleman activity in order to gain as much profit out of his business as possible. In 1882, the Standard Oil Trust was established after the idea was introduced by American lawyer Samuel Dodd. A board of trustees was created, which consisted of 9 members. This allowed Standard Oil to be spread across the nation in seemingly independent entities. However, all of the refineries still worked together, and Rockefeller still managed and had the most control over all of them. Over the next decade, Standard Oil became more aggressive in its business tactics, which would ultimately lead to the downfall of the company's monopoly. John D. Rockefeller named the first billionaire after retirement. Although the Standard Oil Company was dissolved, John D. Rockefeller still managed to make huge profits. The demand for oil saw a resurgence when automobiles began hitting the roads. The oil industry was booming, especially after Henry Ford made the Model T affordable to the middle class. By this time, Rockefeller was in retirement. He became less active in the Standard Oil office and ultimately retired in the late 1890s and began focusing more on philanthropy. Despite running many competitors out of business during the days of the Standard Oil Trust, Rockefeller used a good chunk of his fortune to donate to charities and partook in other philanthropic work. He helped establish the University of Chicago and contributed almost $35 million in total within just 2 decades from the time it was founded. He also founded the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research to support research in medicine, later named Rockefeller University. In 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation was created in an effort to support public health issues. John D. Rockefeller was announced as the world's first billionaire through newspaper headlines in 1916. Towards the end of his life, Rockefeller gave much of his money and assets to his heirs and philanthropies. He died in his home in Ormond Beach, Florida, on May 23, 1937, and was buried at the Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland. Thank you for watching this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to explore more about us and our channel.